This video is brought to you by Deity. Car scenes are super popular in films, and apart from chasing each other on a highway, they are relatively easy to film because the only thing that you need is a car and a camera. Now, what's interesting about car scenes is that it gives the actor a second action. They need to pay attention to the road while driving and also doing their dialogue. But now, what if your actor has to play a drunk character, or he just has to drive around like a maniac? Well, then it's best to rig that car onto a trailer and let another car safely drive it around. Usually that also gives you more flexibility to rig lights, reflectors, multiple cameras and other equipment around that trailer. But now you're looking at a different budget, of course. So the other option is to shoot it all in studio, either on a green screen or using a projector. Now, if you have the space, this definitely is a budget-friendly solution. Now, for this tutorial, I'd like to focus on just driving. No expensive rigs or studio setups. This means that your actor will actually drive a car, so be very careful doing so. Don't let your talent play a drunk character, for example. And if possible, take your shots on an empty road. Every time that we have to shoot a car scene, we do that in an industrial park. It has wide roads and not much cars. During the weekend, there's almost nobody here. Now, sound is one part of your car scene, so let's start with that. So for tip number one, a basic rule is to get the microphone as close as possible to your talent to minimize reverb and, of course, the sound of the car itself. Now, you could use a shotgun mic like this one right here, and we actually got two video mics from Deity, the V-Mic D3 and the Pro version of that. Now, the biggest difference between the two is that the Pro version has a stepless knob right here, which you can control the volume with, which is very useful because that means that you don't have to go into your menus if you're working on a DSLR. Now, if you're close by, having that microphone on your camera is definitely going to work out fine. But if you're shooting from the back seat, a better idea is to place the mic in the cup holder and use a longer mini jack cable to your camera or place a recorder nearby. Another great trick is to work with lavalier mics. And also, Deity has a few of them as well, which are the V-Lavs. Now, these are very affordable and have great audio quality, but what really makes them stand out is their 5-meter long cable. Look at this, guys. This allows you to tuck away the cable anywhere you want and mount the little microphone onto the roof of the car, for example, close by to your talent. Or an even better way, if your actor is looking through out the window, is to mount this to the sun visor and then tuck away the cable to connect this mini jack right here into your camera. Now, for the Americans, this 5 meters is about 16 foot, which is pretty long. Now, when your actor turns his head around while talking, and again, be careful while driving, tip number 2 is to work with 2 microphones. Now, using lavaliers, you can stick them to the roof of the car, like I mentioned before. Or you could also mount 2 shotgun mics on the bottom. And it's actually good to record from below, as it will pick up the resonation from the actor's chest a lot better. A cheap trick if you're working with 2 mics is to buy a mini jack splitter. You can find them for $1 or less maybe, and this allows you to connect 2 mics onto your camera. But if you can, it's always better to plug them into 2 separate inputs to have them on 2 separate tracks, of course. Now, here's a great bonus tip that Andrew from Deity told me. When you're working with 2 mics, make sure that they are placed by the 3-to-1 rule. And that means that if you have one mic sitting at, let's say, 30 centimeters from the actor, the other one should be placed at either 10 centimeters or at 90 centimeters from the actor, which is 3 times less or 3 times more the distance to the other mic. And this is to minimize phase cancellation, which occurs when 2 mics pick up the sound waves from the same distance and thus interfering with each other. And finally, the last audio tip when shooting car scenes is to Foley. Park your car and turn off the engine to record crisp sounds of turning the steering wheel using the gear, pedals, etc. Use these sounds in your edit so that you can separately mix them and make their sounds more prominent when a specific action happens. And finally is the ambient sound. This exists out of just driving the car and recording the sound while everyone is silent, but also things like passing cars or other elements on the road. The more you have on a separate track, the more dynamic that you can put in your edits.
Whoa, trying to feel good. Hey, 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 it's a cameraman. Wait, let me use my singing voice. I'm walking on sun. Jordy, What are you doing next to me? I'm walking on sunshine. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Jordy! What are you doing on the hood of the car? Jordy! Hello!
And this brings us to the
inside.
camera work. Tip number 4, expose for the outside. Whenever you sit in the car, you'll mostly see the outside, which is overexposed. And it is a common mistake to leave the outside overexposed, which you shouldn't do. Try to keep as much detail on the road and don't be afraid to underexpose your talent a little bit. If it doesn't matter where the light comes from, then look for a road that gives you a sunlight from the side of the camera angle. This gives you the most contrast to the background. Now we've got an overcast day unfortunately, so the angle of the sun doesn't really matter that much anymore, although the clouds are always a little brighter where the sun is behind. And that brings us to tip number 5, shooting from outside of the car. Now assuming that you're driving, one way to do that is by following with a second car and have the cameraman shoot out of the window. And again, be very careful doing so. Try to only do this on closed roads and of course drive slow and safe. Now one of the issues that you'll run into are reflections from the windows. To reduce that, use a polarizer filter for your lens. You can dial them to cut away the reflections in the windows. You do need to shoot in a little angle to the glass, but if you're shooting through the front window, no, you're in an angle, so that's great. And here we're using a suction mount on the hood of the car to mount the camera. Now mounts like these start at a very cheap price as well. Just make sure to read some reviews before you buy one. It's better to spend a little more on a suction mount that will actually hold your camera. And popular shots are also through the side window from the outside. This might require some more tools to mount your camera, but it looks really cool. Definitely with shots of the passenger looking through the window. And if you're really short on budget, then simply use a GoPro, which is super easy to mount everywhere. And those were my 5 tips to shoot a car scene on a budget. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Deity, for the support. And as always, stay creative.
What are you doing? I'm recording the wind ambient. I'm still recording.